Menglong's dog found hiding a USB. What was on it terrified everyone. What secret could be so dark that even a loyal pet tried to hide it? When Menglong's dog unearthed a small, dust-covered USB from beneath the garden soil, expected it to hold anything more than old photos. But when the footage was finally played, the room fell silent, faces turned pale, and the truth on screen was far beyond what anyone imagined. Rumors spread, theories ignited. Questions that had long been buried rose again from the shadows. Let's uncover this shocking mystery together, right now. With red carpet revealed. The night it happened was supposed to be uneventful, quiet rain over Shanghai's suburbs. Streetlights reflecting off puddles. Tired housekeeper locking the gate of a mansion that had felt empty for months. She heard it first, the scraping of claws against wet soil. Frantic, insistent. Followed the sound into the garden. The dog was digging. Paws black with mud. Growling low as if protecting something invisible. The housekeeper bent down, shining her phone's flashlight. Something glinted beneath the surface, a plastic sleeve smeared with earth. Inside was a small, silver USB drive. The dog barked once. Sharp, as if warning her. She picked it up anyway. By dawn, half the neighborhood knew. By evening, every news app in China carried the same headline: actor Meng's dog uncovers mysterious USB weeks after his disappearance. The following footage is what turned an ordinary news item into an international obsession. The USB, once decrypted, contained 6 video files, all time-stamped over a single weekend, 3 days before Meng vanished. The first clip opened on a familiar face. Meng, 29, one of Asia's most photographed actors, sat before a mirror in a plain white t-shirt. His eyes were bloodshot. Behind him, a television played static. "If you're watching this," he whispered. Then something went wrong. He leaned closer, voice shaking. "They said I was safe. They lied." The screen went black. Technicians replayed the clip 20 times that morning, searching for cuts, green screen work, anything. There was none. The silence after his words lasted 7 full seconds, long enough for every person in that government lab to realize this wasn't a prank. I arrived the next day. My name isn't important, I was one of many reporters assigned to cover the missing star. But once I saw the footage, I couldn't walk away. The mansion stood at the end of a tree-lined road on the city's edge. Cameras still flashing outside the gate. Reporters shouted questions at anyone who came close. Was it suicide? Was it blackmail? None of us had answers. All we had was that USB, and the sense that we weren't supposed to see what was on it. Inside, the house smelled of dust and rain. Photographs still hung on the walls, magazine shoots, film posters. Red carpet smiles. The dog, a golden retriever named Momo, watched every stranger with a wary intelligence. I followed her into the garden. She sat on the exact spot where she dug up the drive, tail motionless, eyes fixed on the ground. Cameramen whispered theories, hidden evidence, ransom demand, viral marketing stunt. But when the second video leaked, everything changed. It began with a shot of the same room. But the lighting was different, colder, bluish. Meng stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear. "You can't keep this quiet forever," he said. "If I disappear, the truth disappears with me." A pause. "Then, I've hidden it somewhere no one would think to look." He turned, staring directly into the lens. "If you find Momo," he said, "you'll find me." The clip broke the internet. Searches for Momo surged past 10 million. Fans camped outside animal shelters, demanding updates. Within 48 hours, the dog was placed under police protection. When I rewatched the video, I noticed something subtle, the faint reflection of another figure on the window glass behind Meng. A silhouette. Broad shoulders. Standing perfectly still. The official analysis dismissed it as a shadow artifact. But once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. The third file was corrupted. Technicians spent days restoring fragments of audio, heavy breathing, a chair scraping. The same voice whispering one phrase over and over in Mandarin, "It's in the sound." That line became a riddle. Internet forums obsessed over it. Audio engineers ran spectral analyses, converting the noise into frequency graphs. Hidden beneath the static was a pattern, 5 repeating tones that, when mapped visually, formed something unmistakable, the shape of a paw print. Coincidence, said the skeptics. A signal, claimed the believers. Came the leak that terrified everyone. Someone, no one knows who, uploaded the entire recovered video folder onto an encrypted server. Within minutes, thousands had downloaded it. Within hours, every mirror site was taken down. But one file, Vlog 6 MP4, survived long enough to spread. The screen opened on total darkness. Only Yulan Meng's voice could be heard, calm but trembling. "If this is the end," he said, "hope the story still breathes without me." A light flickered on, candlelight, revealing a basement lined with shelves. On the table lay a hard drive, an envelope, and a photo of Momo as a puppy. Yulan Meng reached for the camera, whispering, "You can't cage the truth forever." Then came a sound that none of us could explain, a deep, resonant growl that didn't belong to any dog. The candle exploded. The frame cut to black. The video was 54 seconds long. When it ended, every person who'd watched it sat frozen. Some swore they heard a second voice under his, speaking in another language entirely. Others said they felt the air pressure drop as the candle blew out, even through their headphones. Police called it unedited psychological manipulation. The public called it a haunting. Weeks later, I interviewed the digital forensics expert assigned to the case. His office smelled of coffee and ozone, filled with screens glowing blue. "There's nothing supernatural," he said, adjusting his glasses. "But there is something deliberate." He played the final frame of the candle clip in slow motion. On the table, just before the flame vanished, a reflection appeared in the silver USB, letters engraved so faintly they were almost invisible. SND04. "Sound, file 4, he murmured. "It's in the sound." He opened a recovered audio file from the same folder. First, static. Then, faint music, like a lullaby played underwater. Beneath, a heartbeat. Then, a voice barely audible, "They wanted silence." He paused the playback. "You hear that?" He's saying they wanted silence. The expert looked uneasy. Or he's saying they became silence. The frequency spikes when he says the word, almost like the sound itself is alive. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the candle flare, the dog's paw print, the reflection in the window. Now the story had evolved into myth. Hashtags turned into movements. Fans left USB sticks wrapped in plastic at shrines around the world. Conspiracy channels claimed the files contained subliminal data designed to expose a secret media network. Governments denied everything. The truth was simpler, and worse. When investigators reopened the mansion's basement, they found signs that someone else had been living there in the weeks before the disappearance: food wrappers, a cot, a camera tripod. Fingerprints on the USB matched neither Yulan Meng nor anyone in his household. Whoever buried it for the dog to find wanted it discovered. Only after he was gone, Momo barked continuously that day, refusing to leave the basement door. She scratched the floor where the cot had stood, whining until an officer lifted a floorboard. Beneath it lay another envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper covered in smudged writing. Only one line was legible: "Truth sleeps beneath loyalty." When the words were posted online, people interpreted them 1,000 different ways. Some thought they referred to the dog, the only creature loyal enough to guard the secret. Others believed it was a confession, a metaphor for guilt, buried but not gone. And the following month chasing leads, voice actors who might have faked the tapes, editors who might have doctored the footage. Claim collapsed under scrutiny. The raw data on the USB showed no splicing. The metadata proved the videos were created on Yulan Meng's own camera. The final clip on that device, one that never went public, was recovered only partially. It shows a hallway. The camera shakes as Yulan Meng walks forward, breathing fast. He stops by a door, turns the knob, and says, "Momo, stay." In the mirror at the end of the hall, a reflection moves that shouldn't exist. A dark blur crosses behind him, too tall, too fast. He spins around. Recording ends. No scream. No goodbye. Just the faint jingle of a dog's collar, fading into static. That's how part 1 ends in every retelling: a dog that refused to forget, a USB that shouldn't have been found, and a voice trapped forever between silence and revelation. Whether you believe in curses or conspiracies, one thing is certain: the story doesn't stop here. Second USB is still missing, and whatever truth Yulan Meng tried to leave behind is still waiting, buried in the sound. The mansion was quiet again, too quiet. After the first investigation ended, officials locked the doors and left a warning sign on the gate, "Property under surveillance." But the cameras never stopped the visitors. Few nights someone would sneak in, hoping to hear something, perhaps the sound that Yulun Meng left behind. Most left frightened. A few never spoke of what they'd heard. I returned 6 weeks later with a producer and a sound engineer named Kai. Been studying the recovered audio from the USB. That one last file still hid something. Layered code. He said on the drive out. He embedded frequencies that aren't audible to us. But if we map them visually, they spell coordinates. Coordinates to what? I asked. Kai shrugged. Maybe to where he hid the truth. The rain came down in sheets as we pulled into Pine Ridge, the small coastal town where Yulun Meng had grown up before fame swallowed him. Locals still spoke his name softly, though invoking a ghost. His childhood home stood near the cliffs. Windows boarded, garden overgrown. And waiting at the gate, wagging her tail, was Momo. She recognized the sound of the car before she saw us. When Kai opened the door, she trotted straight toward the cliff path and stopped, looking back as if to say, "Follow me." We did. We roared below, wind whipping at our faces. Halfway down the trail, a rusted shed leaned against the rocks, half buried by vines. Inside, among coils of rope and salt-stained tools, a metal case the size of a shoebox. The latch was stiff but unlocked. Inside were two things, a notebook and another USB drive, black, unmarked, except for one scratch that formed the shape of a crescent moon. Kai exhaled. Second one. Back at our hotel we set up equipment, 3 laptops, noise-canceling headsets, 2 backup recorders. We plugged the drive in. It contained only one folder, titled Silence. Inside were 14 video clips, each no longer than 30 seconds. The first showed Yulun Meng sitting cross-legged on the floor, hair disheveled, candle burning beside him. "If you find this," he said softly. Then they failed to erase me. He looked off-screen. "They told me silence was safety. But silence is where the monsters hide." The second clip was darker, just the sound of dripping water and the faint hum of what might have been a generator. The third showed Momo pulling at a locked door while Yu's voice whispered, "Not yet." By the fourth clip, something changed. Camera trembled as though someone else were holding it. A blurred figure appeared behind him, whispering words we couldn't make out. Yu turned, startled. The frame froze mid-motion. End of file. I replayed it frame by frame, enhancing shadows until the image looked almost three-dimensional. The whisper wasn't in Mandarin or English. When slowed down, it sounded like a breath forming syllables backwards. Meng. Lun Yu. His own name. I felt the hair rise on my arms. He was hearing himself. Or what was left of himself, Kai said. We stayed up all night decoding. At 3:14 a.m., the laptop began emitting a low-frequency hum. Then, without command, it opened a hidden text document. Touch the keyboard. The file contained a single line repeated 5 times. "Truth sleeps beneath loyalty." The same phrase found under the floorboards weeks earlier. Stared at the screen. "This isn't just a message. It's an instruction." "To dig?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Maybe literally." We returned to the mansion before sunrise. Security lights flickered but didn't activate as we crossed the yard. Momo followed quietly, tail low, close to the ground. She stopped at the old apple tree near the back fence, the same tree under which the first USB had been buried. We dug. 2 feet down, Kai's shovel hit metal. Another box. Inside were several envelopes wrapped in plastic and a small voice recorder. The envelopes held photographs, contracts, bank statements, and receipts linking Yulun Meng's production company to a string of offshore accounts. The amounts were staggering. Recorder was what mattered. We pressed play. Static, then Yu's voice again, ragged but steady. "If you're hearing this, I didn't run. Say I lost my mind. Maybe I did. The real madness is silence. You think they bury bodies? No. They bury sound. Every sound that tells the truth." Crash echoed in the background of the tape. Yu gasped. "They're here." The recording ended. Kai looked at me, pale. He wasn't hiding from ghosts. He was hiding from people. We turned the recorder over. On its underside, carved with a knife, SND05. Sound file 5. The pattern matched the previous drive. There were more pieces, perhaps a whole series he'd scattered before he vanished. Over the following week, the documentary team hunted across Shanghai's underground tech market for anyone who could have encoded audio like that. One hacker, a woman who went by Yale, finally cracked part of the algorithm. Each frequency spike corresponded not to numbers or letters but to dates. April 7th, April 14th, April 21st. 3 weeks. 3 leaks. Checked against public records. Each date matched the release of a tabloid article about Yulan Meng's erratic behavior. Every rumor, every scandal, had been timed to bury something else, the financial scandal hidden in those accounts. It wasn't supernatural at all. Deliberate misdirection. But even as we built a case, the footage refused to stay quiet. One who watched the full USB files reported strange physical reactions, ringing in the ears, nausea, headaches. A sound engineer from another network collapsed during playback, describing a low drone that felt like it was inside my bones. Kai began hearing it even when the files were closed. 19 hertz. He muttered one night. That's the frequency that makes humans see things that aren't there. Maybe he found a way to weaponize fear. Final clue came from Momo herself. We had returned the dog to a caretaker near the coast. One morning she called me, terrified. The dog's been scratching the door every night at the same time, 3:07. When I arrived, Momo was pacing, agitated, on the wall near her bed. Moisture from the coastal air had formed a dark stain, roughly circular. Flashlight, it looked almost like a ripple pattern. Someone had thrown a stone into still water. Exhausted and trembling, placed his recorder against the wall. Let's see if it wants to talk. He pressed record. For 10 seconds there was only silence. Then a faint bark. Another. Then, impossibly, Meng's voice again, whispering through the static, "Good girl. You kept it safe." The recorder stopped automatically. Kai looked at me, eyes wide. "You heard it too?" Nodded. That night we analyzed the audio waveform. Then the frequencies of the bark were peaks that spelled coordinates again, this time offshore, near the wreck site of Yulan Meng's last film shoot. Ordered a small research vessel. The captain, superstitious, refused to sail after sunset. So we anchored near the coordinates and waited for dawn. At first light divers went down with waterproof cameras. 30 minutes later one surfaced, breathless, holding a corroded waterproof case. Another USB. The last one. On deck, I opened it with shaking hands. Only one file. No name, no timestamp. Video began underwater, muted blue light. Bubbles rising past the lens. A hand reached toward the camera, gloved, guiding it through the wreckage of a metal frame. The camera turned. And for one instant, the beam of the diver's light caught a face behind the glass of a cracked helmet. Calm. Familiar. Eyes open. Yulan Meng. Then darkness. The file ended there. No one on the dive team claimed to have filmed it. The data suggested it had been created before we even set sail. When I showed it to Kai, he stared for a long time. Maybe he wanted us to find him this way, he said. Not dead. Not alive. Just remembered. The documentary never aired. The network pulled it, citing ethical concerns. The drives were seized by authorities. Kai disappeared a month later. Momo went to live with the producer's family in the countryside. Sometimes, they say, she still digs in the garden at night, whining at the earth until someone calls her name. I kept one thing, the notebook from the shed. The last page reads, "When the world goes quiet, listen for the loyal heart. It never forgets where the truth sleeps." I don't know whether Yulan Meng was murdered, silenced, simply driven mad by what he uncovered. But whenever I play the original audio, just before the end, there's a faint new sound, like waves brushing against stone. Some nights, if you boost the volume, a word slips through the static. Remember, this story faded from the news, replaced by fresher scandals. Yet online forums still trade pieces of the myth, the haunted frequency, the dog who guards secrets, the actor who left his voice inside the sound. Every few months a new clip appears, always anonymous, always deleted within hours. In each, candle burns against the dark and a voice whispers, "Silence is where the monsters hide." I tell myself it's coincidence. But when I close my eyes at night, I still hear the hum. Maybe truth isn't something you find. It's something that finds you, and never lets go. This story ends where silence begins. No matter how far truth is buried, it finds a way to breathe, in sound, in memory, in the hearts that refuse to forget. Yulun Meng's story was never just about fear or mystery, it was about loyalty, courage to remember, and the cost of chasing the light inside the dark. To every reader who stayed until the end, thank you. Thank you for walking through the shadows, for listening to whispers others chose to ignore, and for believing that even in fiction, there is a pulse of something real. Stories like this exist not to frighten us, to remind us, silence is not peace. It is only truth, waiting for someone brave enough to hear it. May you keep listening. May you never stop seeking. And may every secret you uncover lead you closer to understanding, not fear. Thank you for reading. Written with imagination, respect, and gratitude.